Hello, and welcome to the Empress podcast. I am your host, Jessica, known in the online space as Jess the Empress. I started this podcast to help you be present with yourself, cope with chaos, and simplify your life. I do this by combining psychology, behavioral science, and the tarot. I have a background in mental health, specifically a master's in clinical social work from USC, and I'm a professional tarot reader. So get ready to have a nurturing, creative, and empowering experience with me as we use practical magic. Hey y'all, and welcome. We're doing something a little bit different here today. I am really freaking excited to drop this episode with me and Matrika. We are actually in a mentorship session, and this is for people who want to learn how to read tarot cards. I've got this option open. Matrika took this option. So together we dive in, we go over what's happening when we're reading cards. Matrika asks some really great questions. And I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. For those of you who want to learn how to read, I hope it inspires you. I hope you get some really good takeaways from this episode and feel powerful and confident enough to get out there and read for yourself and for other people. All right, let's get into the episode.
Okay.
Hello. I'm just so excited you're here. So we are doing a lesson session, a 15-minute lesson session for tarot readers. So you're a reader, my love. And before we started, when we were texting, I was asking, what do you want to go over? So will you let everybody know what we're focusing on today and where you feel like you want some advice?
Honestly, to be honest with you, I am pretty intimidated by tarot.
Yeah.
Generally, I grew up using tarot. It's probably the first thing, but I feel like I'm just reconnecting with it. So I would say generally the energy of it, but I was telling you about probably love more so, because I think that a lot of people majority of times, I feel like people are asking it's either love or career, but mostly love that I know.
Totally. Yeah, I agree. That's the biggest thing I see. I would say love is at the top, and then money and career probably are tied. So yeah, love is so I don't know if you ever watched, there was this Miss Cleo docudrama series they did on Netflix, but they were talking about how the psychics on the hotline, they were is it money or is it honey? What's the deal? So I get it. Mm-hmm. So what is it that really you feel the most intimidated about when it comes to love? When you're pulling cards and someone says hey, does my boyfriend really care about me? Where is this going? And you're then reading. Tell me what's going on for you.
So with me, I'm a general reader. Okay. I just like it mostly when people just come into me and I just don't have to they don't have to ask me anything, and I get really uncomfortable with questions. That's just me.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think when I look at the picture, I think I get stuck when I'm looking at the picture with tarot, because how tarot, there's just so many certain key codes, keywords for a specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if I was pulling a 5 of Pentacles, I'd be they felt left out in the cold, or I don't know, sometimes I do see other people, the YouTube readers or whatever, they'll be oh, this person is missing you with the 5 of Pentacles. Okay. So I'm okay, so which way are you going with this?
I know, right? So it's one of those things where it's a nuanced thing, and the more you do it, the better at it you'll get. And here's the thing, is it's not always going to be right. You have to recognize sometimes on YouTube and on these other platforms, they are not always connecting one-on-one 100%. Sometimes they are saying really fluffy things because it gets people to buy into watching it longer, hitting yes, subscribing. You have to remember, you're watching it on a platform that is asking you to stay on it, as opposed to a more one-on-one situation where someone, you're just sitting there and you're like, what's the deal? I need to know. So here's the thing with any card. There are general readings and general, vibes we can get from a card, but there's nothing that says this is the absolute right way 100% all the time. That's not a thing. It's a sort of, it like lives with us. Do you know what I mean? Like the meanings can change. You could pull the 5 of Pentacles for yourself today and be like, what does this even mean? And then like 2 years from now, you can be like, you know what? This means something totally different than what I thought it did a while ago. So this is where it just comes to trusting your gut and also taking a breath and just really affirming to yourself, like, I'm the reader. I know what I'm doing. I've got this. So what might help with a deeper context is pulling a follow-up card. And when you're pulling that follow-up card, asking Spirit, what does this mean? Like, give me more insight into the 5 of Pentacles. So pull another card and see what happens.
Right, it's for fun. Like this. Okay, so I'm just gonna do this after it's 8 of Swords.
Okay. So if that gives you
because
yeah.
So yesterday I just look at people's posts and they'll be asking, but I didn't answer anything. But I like pull them cards, and this guy was basically asking, does this girl regret her action? Is she gonna come apologize to me?
Mm-hmm.
And I got these 3 cards. I got the 5 of Pentacles was the first one. I didn't ask for follow-up. I would say this is a follow-up with 8 of Swords.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the back of the deck, it's 3 of Wands. So my feeling was like, well, I think that the girl is going to reach out.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I feel like the person was feeling trapped and like left out in the cold.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, like, and that they also don't necessarily have the insight to break free right now. So I would say, is she going to reach out to him? Yeah, probably. But is she going to apologize and take accountability for her actions? Probably not, right? That 3 of Wands to me does speak to reaching out. But usually I see the 8 of Swords. I've seen the 8 of Swords come up in many situations. I've literally seen it come up in multiple readings when people are in jail. So they physically cannot reach out. I've seen it when they're mentally or emotionally blocked, or I've seen it when they're trying to hide something from my client and they're keeping my client in the dark about something. They're using some type of like manipulation to keep my client trapped in the relationship. So there's many different ways, obviously, like we can interpret this. But to me, with your 8 of Swords following up your 5 of Pentacles, you're spot on. So sometimes pulling an extra card can give us reassurance that we're doing the right thing, or that our initial response or feeling into it was correct. Other times it expands us into considering other possibilities. But really, again, trusting yourself, your style of reading, your cards, it's unique to you. And this is why practice makes perfect, and learning how to just dive deep and get what your cards mean to you is the whole key. It's like your intuition speaks to you in a different way. It's going to be totally different than more than half the readers that you see online. But my whole goal is to get you to trust yourself and know, like, this is your relationship with your deck and nobody can change that or take it away from you.
So when it comes to like using different decks, like different tarot decks, do you have your own way of like interpreting things, like with the pictures on its own, or like do you use like key code in your head, but also your own interpretation of like what you're, like what you're actually seeing, because the original deck, like let's say for example this 4 of Wands, there'd be like people holding hands or whatever they're doing, right? Yeah,
that's the one I have. I have the one where they're holding hands.
There's no people in it.
I would say for that one, again, if they're giving you a general question, if they're like, I need help, give me some insight, and you pull the 4 of Wands, you absolutely don't have to make it about other people, unless they specifically say to you, like, there's someone in my life and I want to know about them. You know that there's people involved in the 4 of Wands, so maybe you could shift that into your interpretation. But here it is in my card, like the 2 people. But I also say that the 4 of Wands can be like, when was the last time that you actually followed through on the hobby that you wanted, right? When I think about the number 4, I think about boundaries and I think about containers and I think about the boundaries that we have with ourselves. And then I kind of pivot into, well, what's the element here? In my style of reading, I use the major arcana as a way to, I use the numerology from the major arcana. So the 4 is ruled by the emperor. So then I think the major energy of the emperor can then be shifted into all the 4s of the minors. So,
okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So how do you apply that, especially like, okay, like where, so whenever I see like number 4 or, I think about for like, especially the 4 of Wands, I think about like stability, like balance,
yes,
you know?
Yes. And I think about fun and play in Wands. I think about initiating. I think about inspiration. So this person, you might want to say like, okay, but when was the last time you actually did something that inspired you? When was the last time you took a walk outside in nature? Because it's pictured like outside. When was the last time you got out of your little space? Because you see that there's like a castle in the background, right? And there's like walls and stuff. And I always think about like getting out and taking action. Taking action is better than no action. It has to match up with your values. It has to match up with that energy of like, well, what is it that you're really aiming for? So that's all Aries energy that is connected to the emperor. That's the astrological association. But the emperor like does what it wants, you know, and it's the initiator. It's the king and governor of its own life. And it doesn't really care so much about its pace. It's not comparing itself based on all this external crap. It's just like, I'm here right now. And like, that's it. Bottom line, point blank, period. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's just, I don't know. It's so fascinating too. You know, like like, you know how people just shuffle and then they'll just pull their cards, or I like my cards to fall out, right?
I love that. Yeah.
But yeah, just, I really like when the spirit just like tell me something, you know, because it's kind of freaky that way.
It is.
It's so freaky, like, you know, but like, what is the, I just want to know, like, because I notice a lot of people will, like, be, like, looking at the bottom of their deck, you know, when they're, like, done pulling and shuffling, and they'll be, like, looking at the bottom energy. Like, what is that implying to? Like, I know everybody has, like, different intuitive way of doing it, but I want to know, like, what's your view on it?
My view is it's just deeper insight or something we're uncovering that we might be glossing over. And that's just my perspective. It's just a different way to randomize the pile, but I also feel like it gives us such a deeper connection to the person that we're reading, because if you're shuffling the deck, it's fine. There's no wrong or right way to do it. I have friends who will like, they have a big pile of the cards, like they don't even physically move them like this. It's just a big pile on their table as they're reading, and they pull cards. So they're not really doing like bottom of the deck technique. But for those of us that do shuffle, sometimes it's just nice to have another random card to pull from a different position. I know some people will even take it and then they'll like split the deck and pull this one from the center and whatever that, my dog is talking, whatever that one is. Yeah, Justice. I love it. It's so funny. This is the shit that we can't make up. You know what I mean? It's like so funny. But it's honestly, it's whatever resonates for you. And then don't feel like you have to stick with this for your entire life. Like, try it on.
Right.
See how it works. If you like it, stick with it for a little bit. There are times where I feel like I need to shift my style just because I feel a little stagnant. I'm also reading in such a high demand because I'm a professional reader, like in my day-to-day life. So I'm constantly moving my deck. And there's times where I'm like, oh my God,
so
I'm just
cool.
like, so bored of like shuffling this way. I need to change it up. So again, don't feel like you have to commit to something. Try it on. Use the technique for like a few weeks. See how it resonates mostly with yourself and how you're feeling when you're doing it. If you're shuffling and you're feeling like you're getting anxiety, that's not the vibe. The vibe is to shuffle and to feel connected and to feel open. That's the vibe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I always make sure, like when I'm shuffling for people, like when I'm doing live, I just want to make sure that I'm really like at ease, like I just
Yes.
shuffle until I'm literally like blank.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
No, yeah,
Like it's almost
absolutely.
like this meditation because otherwise I'd be like, ah!
I know. Yeah. I had to work through that when I first started. I would have like, and I'm not saying that we can't pull in anxious states. Like we absolutely can, and we can absolutely be as equally intuitive when we're anxious or when we're calm. Like it's not that big of a deal. But I do mean like for your own connection and sort of getting out of your own head, those deep breaths and having that calm state are also, I think it's just it's like better. It's like a better experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Another thing I'm curious is like, how do you like, to any questions really? I mean, that's the deep thing about tarot is like it can answer any questions, but like how
Yeah.
are you like applying that to like people like most random like wacky questions like
It depends on your personal boundary. This is what I tell people.
uh-huh
The other thing too is we live in a physical world. We live in a material world
uh-huh
where there are consequences. So I have seen people get sued. I have seen these things. I've seen people take in retaliation based on a tarot reading. And I don't say this to put fear in anyone. I say this so that you're grounded and deciding where your line is. And everyone has a line. Some people have no problem reading on pregnancy, on health. Some people have no problem reading on the different questions like what's this person's sexual orientation. Some people don't have any problems reading on that. You need to determine what feels best for you according to your morals and ethics. It's not something I can determine for you. So just make sure you're really clear about if you, what are the consequences that might unfold from this? And are you willing to back that up should they, come back into your face kind of thing? If someone points to you and says, she told me this, are you willing, are you fine to stand there and be like, yeah, I did. And here's why. Or is it something where you were like, oh, that was not my best moment? You know what I mean?
yeah
Everyone's different. And I know that there are so many readers who do really well with pregnancy, with like financial advice, lottery numbers. Like it's out there. Everything you can think of exists. It's what feels good for you. And also start where you're comfortable. Don't feel like you have to serve everybody because you don't. Like you don't have to be everyone's cup of tea.
yeah, that's why I don't like I just go with where I'm at right now, and that's why I don't like answer people questions. I only
That's
do like
fine.
general, and I just let people come because like I think I'm just practicing it. Like my guides are telling me that, but also like I know that one day I need to like open it up more with like
Mm-hmm.
tarot,
You
with just
will.
doing oracles, and picking people's energies and feeling because that's
Yeah.
my specialty is I do pick up people's energy, like what they're going through, their heads and
Mm-hmm.
their thoughts and feelings,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not like, I don't, I mean, I'm all clear, but like I don't want to like tell people future. Like I don't want people to like rely on that, like use it as a
Mm-hmm.
question. Like, oh, is this coming in? Is this not coming in? Like I don't like that. I don't know
Yeah.
why.
Well, honestly, that's not on you. That's on them. You could say anything. I mean, anybody could
Yeah,
project that onto you. They could be watching a doomsday person on the news and be like, that's what's going to happen. And then claim that because they're seeking and they're looking and that's really their own confirmation bias happening. It doesn't have anything to do with you. What I mean is like in terms of retaliation, like, of course, people need someone to blame because that's the place of life that they're in. And like, again, it has nothing to do with you. But I do feel like there has to be some responsibility that we take as a reader for the role that we do have. So again, it is like walking that line. You're not responsible for people's projections, but being mindful of how you can impact, I think just helps you, again, really narrow in on what is your line of moral, ethical, space. You know what I mean?
yeah. So I'm also curious, for tarot, do people come to you for like a mediumship reading? Like,
Mm-hmm.
are they like coming to you for like, oh my gosh, what is my dead mom telling
Mm-hmm.
me?
Yeah,
you know,
totally. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
and
they
you just use that.
I just, okay. And so the way that I connect with my deck is I say, okay, like, what's your person's name? And then they'll tell me,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll say, okay, great. And then I just shuffle the deck and pull cards. It's all about communication. And whether we're communicating with energy in the physical realm, because we're like reading on the actual client, or we're reading on a physical person still on this side, or we're
Mm-hmm.
talking to someone passed over, it doesn't matter. Like the tarot is, they're going to tell you something that you already, not necessarily you already know, but like within the physical realm, they're going to tell you something like, girl, you've been neglecting drinking water. Or like, do you remember that time we went to that concert? Like, I think about that song. Like, they're going to do all of that. And you can absolutely pick that up through the cards. You don't need, you know what I mean? It's a great tool for connecting.
For sure. It's so
Yeah,
weird that
I
way.
know.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. I'm so glad that we got to do this. All right, friends, that concludes this lesson session podcast episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you have been considering getting a reading with me, I would love to read your cards, but this is definitely for the people who want to learn how to read cards. Having somebody like me can help you so much. It can be so beneficial because you're unpacking things that you don't have to do alone. Like I'm here for you. So if you want a one-on-one with me, I absolutely have mentorships open. Those doors are open all the time and can be booked on my website at jesstheempress.com, or you can send me a message at 909-619-2831, and we can chit chat about what a mentorship would look like for you so you can learn how to read tarot cards, help yourself, and help other people.